All right, Adam Walker, we are live. You ready for this?
No. Sure, why not? Let's do something.
When are we ever ready for stuff that we start?
I mean,
You know?
I think you can fool yourself into believing you're ready, but the reality is like it's like I tell any like young person that's thinking about getting married, like you're never ready to get married. You just got to decide, or you're never ready to have kids.
Kids, yeah, that's
or
the
you're
one.
never ready to start a company, or you're never ready.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we are here to talk about the fact that 10 years ago, we started something called 48 and 48. And I think neither of us can believe what's happened to it and where it's gone. We just had our 10-year anniversary event,
Yep.
which was phenomenal. So I thought we'd just reflect and tell some stories and think about, how we got to this point.
All right. I like that.
I'll start by just saying it started as a one-time thing that you and I were trying to do to bring a couple hundred people together at Ponce City Market back before Ponce City Market was cool. It was pretty brand new. And the goal was to build 48 nonprofit websites in a 48-hour period.
Yeah.
So we showed up, I think Friday morning. Everyone else showed up Friday late afternoon. And by Sunday night, somehow we had built 48 websites.
Yeah. It was mass chaos is what it was. Yeah. Mass chaos ensued. It was great. It was great.
I still don't know how we pulled it off. I mean, we've had 34, 33 events.
I think we just finished 35, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think we just finished 35. Yeah.
So since we started at 35 events, but when we started it, we just thought, we're doing this once.
Let's do this one thing. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it'll be great. It'll be fun. Then we can sleep. It'll be fine.
And then it was the volunteers that seemed to want to do more. Which shocked us.
What are we doing this next year? Next year?
Who said anything
same time?
About that? Yeah. Let me ask you this. Yeah. When I reached out to you and sort of threw the beginning of the idea to you, what was it that made you think it was even possible? Because most people had told me you can't build a website in a weekend. You certainly can't build 48 in a weekend.
Okay, so here, I'm gonna say several things to you. I don't think I've ever told you this. So a couple things. Number one, you were Jeff Hillemeyer, very successful entrepreneur in the agency space. I was at the time Adam Walker, not successful like struggling entrepreneur in the agency space. You asked me I'm be crazy to say no. Are you freaking kidding me? Like, of course I'm gonna say yes, right? Like that. Number one. Number two, I don't know. I mean, I'm sort of wired to say, you think I can't do that? Watch me. That's kind of been my whole, I started a nonprofit when I was 18 years old. That's my whole life. It's been watch me, and so you came up with this crazy idea. I'm like, let's do that for sure. Why would we not do that? Can we start right now? Let's go,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
I think you were the craziest person that I knew that would say yes. I literally bounced it off some other people, not to ask them if they do it with me, just the concept. And they're like, dude, no, that's
a terrible idea.
No,
yeah. But at the same time, you might have also, for what it's worth, I would guess you bounced off of some people that probably had something to lose, right? Maybe they were higher level. I didn't have anything to lose. I mean, I was running a tiny agency. Nobody knew my name. I don't care. Let's go. If it was an utter failure, fine. I didn't care, so I didn't have anything to lose. Why not?
So we did that first event and then it went well and we said, okay, we'll do it again. And then we said, let's see if this is something bigger than just Jeff and Adam's friends in Atlanta that want to show up for a good time on a weekend. So we did in 2016, we did an event in New York and one in Atlanta, and we didn't know anybody in New York. So it was find a venue, find hundreds of volunteers, find nonprofits. I still don't know how we pulled that one off.
Honestly, that has to probably have been the hardest event that we've ever done. Well, I take that back. Minneapolis was a pretty colossal failure, so maybe that was the hardest event. But Minneapolis that's a whole different story. We can tell that story on this call if you'd like. But New York, that was profoundly. I mean, it was cold outreach to everybody to get the volunteers, cold outreach to getting the nonprofits for the first 5 years was the hardest part. Getting nonprofits that needed websites to believe that we were going to do it for them. That was crazy.
Yep.
So, yeah.
For a long time, it may still be the case now, but one of the hardest things was getting nonprofits to actually sign up for the thing. Cause
That's right.
think we've we've debated why that is. There's so many reasons, but that
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that was one
for
of the
sure.
more surprising things is like,
Oh, for sure.
wait, the nonprofits are supposed to be the ones to easily say yes.
I thought they'd come out of the woodwork, and
Yeah.
they absolutely did not. The volunteers came out of the woodwork pretty well. Again, not in Minneapolis, but that's okay. But the Minneapolis one, I will say this: that was an interesting story. We ended up there. We had 48 nonprofits. I was there. I think I had a cold, and the volunteer turnout for whatever reason for that event just was not good. So we flew up my entire company, my whole agency, which was only like 7 of us, flew the whole company up. I think that company, which was Sideways 8 at the time, built, I want to say 15 websites that weekend. Like just that one group of people. It was insane.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah, it was just wild. So anyway.
Yeah. And then so we did 2 in 2016, and then we did 4, including Minneapolis in 2017, and then we added London. And so we built all this momentum up, and then COVID hit. And it was like, okay, you're trying to get hundreds of people together in a venue for 2 days. Yeah, that's not happening.
That's a terrible idea. Yeah.
And we lost almost all our funding immediately. And so that was a pretty big blow. SEMA was running the organization at the time, and she worked with the volunteers and figured out how to do virtual events, which even I was like, wait a minute, we're going to try to bring hundreds of people together virtually to build, like, that even sounded crazy to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, SEMA knew the volunteers. I mean, you know, SEMA and Carol were volunteers before they became the executive director at various times. So they really understood how that would work. But you probably were more bullish on the ability to pull off virtual.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've always been a virtual guy, you know, like I was preaching virtual companies before virtual companies was even a thing. So yeah, I figured we could do it, but I was very thankful that SEMA was in the driver's seat to do it. So she did a great job. It was fantastic. Worked out great.
And she did it right. They did a one website test over a weekend. And then I think maybe they did 4. And but, you know, I tell the story. I'm like, you know, that could have ended the organization. We could have said, hey, you know what? It was a good run. We did what we could. It was fun while it lasted. Instead, it allowed us to scale. You remember how hard it was? Like, we never pulled off Los Angeles, because to think about it, when you want to add a city, you've got to find a venue, you've got to recruit the volunteers, you got to get sponsors to be able to pay for the food and the drinks, and then you got to keep people hydrated and full. So it was really tough. And then we would have people, I remember specifically, like, people, there was a group in Toronto that was like, hey, we really want to participate. And we were like, you want to fly to Atlanta? Like, that's about the only way you can participate. And now that we can do virtual, we've got people all over the world participating.
Yeah, I mean, I think the event 2 weekends ago, I want to say it was 19 time zones. Is that right?
Oh my
Something
gosh.
like that. Participated. Yeah, I mean, there were people all over the world. I mean, so it was great because, like, there would be teams, and they'd have a team member on the other side of the world. And so, like, the project manager would assign all the stuff that didn't get done, you know, Friday night to the team member that's on the other side of the world. And then they'd wake up the next morning and then a bunch of stuff was done. And they just keep rolling. So it actually kind of made it more effective in some ways.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. So now it's, you know, almost limitless in its ability to scale. And, you know, so we've morphed to where we used to have city specific events. And now we have essentially 3 themed events. We have a women's build event, which is all women volunteers doing the website builds. And then we have a social justice event, which is focused on nonprofits that are focused on social justice or have founders and executive directors of color. And then we have our global, we call it, event. I mean, we probably need to change the name of that because they're all global now.
It's the main event.
It's the big event in October. We probably need a new name. But so we got those 3 events right now. They all happen in Atlanta. They don't have to. Because people are all over the place.
Yeah. And I think there's a possibility that we might do some city specific events at some point again too. But again, we'd have to have a concentration of volunteers. We'd have to have a space. Like, there'd have to be some components there to make that make sense. But I like the idea of it, at least, because I like the idea. I mean, the whole purpose, the whole mission is to engage volunteers to use their professional skills for good. And we can do that virtually. We can do that in person. We can do that. There's a lot of different ways we can do that. And so we want to just find, you know, new ways to do that throughout.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think holding true to that idea has allowed us to continue growing in the right direction. The idea that this thing
Yeah.
exists to allow people to use their skills to do good.
Yeah, that's right.
And yes,
Yeah.
the end result is that we help nonprofits, but that, that's the end result. It's like we stay true to that North Star, and that's helped to guide us along the way.
That's right. All right. So, funny story to remind you of. You ready? You ready for a funny memory here?
Of course.
So I believe this was in New York, and one of the events that we had at the New York event, you were there. You had, I think your oldest son was there. And one of the events was like, it wasn't an escape room because we're like at an event. It was like an escape box, and you'd go through it and you'd have to have riddles and stuff. And so I was on a team with you and like one other guy. It was like guys versus girls. And there was like, I think Seema and Gina and Carol and Emily were on the other team. And your son had wanted to join our team, but we were like, no, just let the men, let
the grown-ups do it.
Like that was kind of and so
I think that was Boston, by the way.
Oh, it might have been Boston. Yeah,
I think it
was Boston. You're right. So our team got just completely stuck on this one riddle that we just absolutely could not get the answer to. So the girls destroyed us. So then, like a few minutes later, your son walks up and you're like, "Hey, let me ask you this riddle." You asked him the riddle. He immediately rattled it off, knew it instantly.
Yep.
And so, had he been on our team, we would have won. But because we were pompous and arrogant, we lost to.
I think I remember the answer. I don't remember the riddle, but do you remember the answer?
I think the answer was fire, wasn't it? Yeah, I don't remember. I don't remember what the riddle was, but
he just walked up and he's like, "Yeah, that's fire." And we were like, "What? How did you do that?"
I remember looking at him in that moment, thinking, "I am the biggest moron." Not just the biggest moron because I couldn't get the riddle that the kid, because he was probably what 12, 13 at the time. Like he was pretty young.
Yeah, he probably was.
And I didn't feel like a moron because I didn't get the riddle. It's because I should have known that having him on our team was an advantage matter what. Like that's why I felt like a moron. I was like, I am the biggest moron. So
that was so funny. He almost couldn't understand. He's like, well, it's fire, right? Like what? So what's the tricky part? That was so funny. Now, another funny story. So that second year we went to New York and we did the event in New York. Now in Atlanta, the previous year, basically teams would work on websites, but if a team got done early, they would help other teams.
Right.
Different teams of different sizes.
Right.
So in New York, I remember so clearly we had like one team, I want to say they had like 15 people. It was like some big company. I want to say it was IBM. And they had, one or two websites. And then there was this other team that had like 4 people and they had 1 or 2 websites.
Right.
And we always, for fun would award a winner or like the top 3 or whatever website at the end of the thing.
Do.
So, yeah. So, and we don't like, it's not some big money prize, but it's a pride thing and people get excited about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was like early Sunday, and the big team was done. They had finished their websites and the smaller team was struggling. And we went over and we're like, "Hey, can you guys help out? They're trying to get it done. You're literally sitting here doing nothing." And you remember what they said?
If memory serves, they said, "No, thank you." Is that right?
Yeah. They said, "No." They said, "We want to win." We were like, "Well, it's not really about that." They're like, we couldn't get them to budge. We couldn't get them to budge. They wouldn't help the other team.
Yeah, it was, and then I remember, the London event was great. Getting to travel to London for that event was amazing. There was an agency there that ended up building a whole bunch of sites, and then helping everybody else. And we're still in touch with that agency owner. He was amazing. He's been a great supporter for years and years and years. I mean, we've made some good friends through this process for sure. It's
really been a great community. Another story I like is we used to print off the before and after home pages, and that's how we would vote.
And post them up on the wall, like tape them to the wall. Yeah.
And so we'd have our judges go and walk up to the wall and which one's better, which, that's kind of a fun aesthetic thing, but like not at all functional or, you can't. And one of our volunteers was like, I think I can create a quick, like toggled website to allow judges to do that. Right.
Yeah. And he did it in like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like it was wild. All right. So another story. So we finished our first event, and at the time you were reading a book about running, and it was about barefoot running. And so at the end of the event, you're like, Adam, to celebrate, we've got to go barefoot run on the Atlanta
Brooklyn Bridge.
Beltline. On the
Oh,
first
oh.
event on the
First
Atlanta
event.
Beltline.
Yeah.
So we did a barefoot run for like a quarter mile. It was very short there. But yeah, then the next year we're in New York, and you're like, all right, Adam, when we finish, we've got a barefoot run the Brooklyn Bridge. And I was like, you've lost your freaking mind. But of course I'm going to say yes, because I'm never going to back down. And we ran literally, I think only halfway, like right to the middle, barefoot. It was cold too.
It was cold.
It was
yeah.
very cold. That was the greatest. Terrible idea. We probably should never have done that, but it was amazing. I would probably do it again.
Yeah,
that was a good one.
Those London events were really fun.
Yeah,
that was a neat experience.
Yeah, other than the racist cab driver that we got when we first arrived there.
Oh,
but other than that guy, it was a fun event. Yeah, so that was very awkward.
So 10 years from now, we're going to be doing another podcast. This thing is going to keep going.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to change. It's going to grow. It's going to morph. I think as we're talking about, like 48 and 48 has to grow to sort of earned revenue model for a nonprofit, so it can be more self-sustaining. Because like you said, a lot of our sponsors sort of dried up because of COVID. And I think there's a good path to that. And so, I think we'll be here in 10 years. I think we'll have opened up lots of new areas where we can support professionals using their skills for good. A lot of areas where we can support nonprofits that need marketing help. And who knows what'll come.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where we go. I'll just point out, as we've had new board members come in and people give us advice, one of the first things they ask is like, well, can we do things other than websites? Right.
Yeah.
And it's a great question. Could you do a new brand, a new logo?
Right.
Could you do a social media campaign? I think, the thing that we've learned is these are small nonprofits that, were you to rebrand them in a weekend, which would be helpful to them, then you hand them this new brand, and then they probably have to do a new website with it. They have to create new business cards. They have to create new signs in their office. They have a lot of work to do after that. Same thing with a social media campaign.
That's right.
We've talked about, could you create a 12-month calendar with social media experts and even create the first month of content? Great. But then they have to, and we're talking about small organizations where the marketing person's also the front desk person, is also they've got 8 jobs. They're not, there's no CMO.
Yeah.
Whereas a website, we can launch it that weekend and it's ready to go. And
that's right.
That's what's kept us focused on websites. So, we might do new things, but it makes sense.
And because websites, tend to be the core of the marketing experience anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing that they have to drive people to donate. It's the thing they drive people to sign up for their service, or they drive volunteers to sign up to volunteer. So it's kind of the thing. And so it gives them sort of that central hub to then do all of the other stuff. But really, like, one of the things that I do want to do for 48 and 48 is to offer at least advice on those other things. Like, what should you be doing for content? How do you do that? What are some tools you should use? Like, we want to become a resource for that. And I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like. I don't know that we can do it for them, but at the very least, we can offer some coaching and some support along the lines.
Yeah, agreed. So,
we'll see.
Well, as I think about, like, the 2 leaders that we had, Mark O'Brien was also an executive director for a little while. But he was really just helping us keep his hand on the steering wheel while we were in between EDs. But I think, like, Carol helped us scale. Like, she was just in it with us, just running, catching anything. And I think Seema helped us, like, professionalize, if I could say it like that. Like, she would, one of the things that's a real strength of hers is that I think she was willing to say, hey guys, let's focus and make sure everything we build is high quality.
Right. That's right.
Then scale, which I think, we agreed with, but we needed to hear, because we're like, run, jump. How many
go
can we make a year?
Bigger. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Seema was kind of instrumental behind, like, saying, like, hey, we're going to have one team do one website, because there were teams that were doing 4 websites in a weekend.
Right.
And the quality wasn't as good. And so now we have one team doing one website. The quality's better. We're able to control more variables there, and it's working out way better for the nonprofits in the long run.
Do you remember, I think I was pushing this narrative pretty hard. Do you remember what, like, the big goal used to be?
Let's see. I think it was 48 events simultaneously in 48 cities. That was That was a pretty ambitious goal. Now looking back at that, like the infrastructure and money
Oh
it
my
would take
gosh.
to pull that off, like
It's
I just
insane.
can't even imagine. But
Yeah,
but
I don't know that we're going to get there, but also now I don't know that we need to.
I like the gumption. I like the idea behind it. You know,
that was the idea, and
Yeah.
the only reason I remember that is because I saw it somewhere. It might be in one of my books, where somebody recently asked me, "Is that still the goal?" And I was like, "Oh man, no, that's definitely not still the goal."
no, the goals change. The goals change, but impact is the goal, right?
That's right.
That's the big thing. Is
So let's talk about impact for
Yeah.
a quick second. So I
Yeah,
think our
yeah.
stats are the volunteers have built over 1,300 websites
Yep.
so
That
far.
sounds right. Yep.
About 7,500 volunteers
Yep.
over the last 10 years. And I don't know, it's something like $300 million worth of estimated impact. So
yeah.
it's like 33 million in literally donated services, but then the broader impact of
That's right. Yep. That's
the
right.
websites we've built and the impact they've had on those communities is, somebody estimated it at around 300 million. So
Yeah, because we try to track the impact that each nonprofit has in their local community, and we ask them for numbers and things like that. And so that sort of rolls back up into what we're doing because we're helping the helpers, and so we want to see what the long-term impact of that is. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd end by saying most people think that if you're not a web developer or designer, you can't participate in our events. What percentage of the volunteers would you say actually have skills in creative or technology?
A fraction. I mean, I don't know the actual percent, but certainly a fraction. I mean, we have, because if you want to volunteer at 40/48, we need project managers, we need content people. We need people that just sort of understand the basic fundamentals of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like you don't even need to necessarily understand the building of the website. We actually can walk you through that part of it. It's more of having the eye, like knowing what to knowing what a call to action is, like knowing what a headline should look like that sort of thing. But honestly, if you don't know any of that stuff, that's fine. We still have a place for you, and we can still make sure that you have the opportunity to help out and serve, because there's lots of opportunity at every event that we do, both virtually and in person.
That's right. Yeah. So 48in48.org. It's a great time. I mean, people really love it. I think
it is.
I don't, we don't have exact percentages, but a high percentage of people come back after one event.
Yeah. I would say, people tend to stay around for somewhere between 3 to 7 events.
Yeah.
And then they're sort of burned out a bit, need a break, and then they get a break, and then we sort of rope them back in. See if we can get some more work. So it's great. Right. But I mean, we've had people, to your point, like Emily, that was, from State Farm, and there were events that we had that she drove from Bloomington, Illinois to Atlanta. She drove from Bloomington to Boston for that event.
Yep.
She, on her own dime, like transported herself to go to so many different events just to support the organization, with such an amazing influence and help and support overall. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's a great time. So hopefully people can come participate, check it out. If you've got a nonprofit, we would love for you to submit. We always need more nonprofits to help.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. Adam, I'll see you in 10 years.
See you sooner than that.
Thanks, buddy. See ya.
Thank you.